Well, you've really done it again, Dem. You've come to the wrong place at the wrong time, so it must be the wrong stuff. Guy Denton, how you doing?
Is that our new slogan? I don't have a problem if it is. I don't know if it's a great way of. I don't know if it's a great way of attracting new listeners. But I guess it does set them up in a fair and honest way for what they're in for with this show.
It does, and unlike Kamala Harris, I'm willing to call the voters stupid and evil. So I will call them a basket of deplorables as long as they click like and subscribe and tell a friend. That's all we need here.
As long as there are deplorables, Matt, then I welcome them, and I'm grateful for their participation in the democratic process. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am good, although I just threw out a bag of swag of T-shirts that literally said "enemies of the people." So I'm a little bummed out that I could have recycled that for the enemy within. But other than that, things are good. The curse that I have today, Guy Denton, is too much material. I've got too many clips to show. So let's just jump right in. It feels like a week ago, but I guess it was like yesterday or something. Kamala Harris was on with Brett Baier on Special Report, did an interview, finally got an answer to that question. How are you different than Joe Biden?
Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me minutes ago, and the business sector, and others who can contribute to the decisions that I make about, for example, my plan for increasing the supply of housing in America and bringing down the cost of housing, addressing the issue of small businesses, which is about working with the private sector to bring more capital and access to capital to our small business leaders, including my plan for...
Yeah, I thought that was a good answer. And look, I really feel like this interview is a Rorschach test. I mean, I think there are people who saw this interview and sincerely believed that she bombed. I thought she did great. I think she seemed charming. I think she seemed happy. It was a tough interview. I thought Brett Baier was asking very difficult questions, but I didn't feel like it was inappropriate. I thought that these were hard questions, but that was good for her. And at times she was tough. That's how I saw it. But other people that I respect thought she did poorly. Where did you come down on this, Guy?
Well, if it is a Rorschach test, Matt, I'm not sure who the crazy one is, because I'm honestly probably right in between you and some of those other people. It's interesting. I didn't watch the interview live. I watched it yesterday. And all I heard was how much of a catastrophe it was. I saw that commentary online. I had people texting me, telling me what a disaster it was. I talked to people who told me how terribly she did and how it was a huge black eye to the campaign and she squandered a golden opportunity, all of these cliched attacks on it. When I actually sat down and watched it yesterday, initially, that's a clip from the middle portion of the interview.
Yeah, this is not going to be in chronological order, by the way, but fair point.
So I thought that in the initial stages on the immigration questions, she actually did quite a good job, regardless of you can debate the nuances and the policy substance of her answers. But I thought she did quite a good job reframing the questions, defending herself and throwing things back to Brett in a compelling and in a way that seemed prosecutorial and confident but wasn't pugilistic. I thought all of that was fairly well done.
But you and I see that and we applaud and say that's how it's done. That's what politicians are supposed to do. Stay on message. And if it's an issue that is a tough issue for you that skews Republican, if you're a Democrat, then you need to answer it and then change the subject and go on the attack. So she did exactly what she's supposed to do. I think a lot of the criticism of her was from people who said, well, she didn't spend all of her time responding, playing defense. She kept attacking Trump. And so it's almost like, yes, she kept attacking Trump. That's why I'm saying she did a good job. Other people are saying that's evidence that she actually did poorly.
Well, here's the thing. In that first section, the immigration section, I would agree with you. But in the middle section that you just played that clip from, I would actually agree with her critics. Because there, when Baier started to actually press hard on questions that are entirely fair questions, a lot of his initial questions about immigration were very much red meat for the Fox News viewing carnivores, right? But a lot of the questions he asked in the middle portion about Biden's record, about how she could justify the question about, when did you notice that Biden's mental decline set in if he was completely competent for the first 3 years? All of that sort of thing. I think these are the sorts of questions that are on the lips of moderate, reasonable people who are still torn by this election, not just partisan conservatives. And the fact that she, in her responses, was so focused on simply attacking Trump and trying to dismantle Trump, I thought it was detrimental because she didn't do enough to actually put forward a kind of clear and compelling vision and her agenda for herself and for her own campaign. And that, I think, was the big failure of the interview. I think she had an opportunity to do that, and she wasted it. She got too caught up in trying to, in some cases fairly, take it to Fox News and push back on Brett and push back. I thought when Brett played that clip of Trump, I'm forgetting the exact context of the question, but he played that clip of Trump that wasn't.
I've got it. We'll get to that. I've got both clips. You've mentioned two. I've got both. But let me say, I think what you need to do is, if someone asks you a question, you've got 60 seconds to respond. Take 20 seconds to answer it, and then the next 40 seconds to go on the attack.
Yeah.
So she maybe didn't spend enough time answering the question, but I actually think it's more important to reframe the question. And so they're asking about Biden's age, and we'll play that clip right now. She turns it around on Brett Baier and says, "You want to talk about Biden? Biden, guess last time I checked, Biden's not running for president. Donald Trump is, and he's going to be the oldest." So I actually think she did a good job. I applaud her for the toughness and the tenacity. Maybe in your mind, it was, or your perception was, it was too slick, too much spin. But let's play the clip.
Concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And Donald Trump
But
is,
you talked about it.
And Donald Trump
After George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the people who know him best, including leaders of our national security community, have all spoken out. Even people who worked for him in the Oval Office, worked with him in the Situation Room, and have said he is unfit and dangerous and should never be president of the United States again, including his former vice president, which is why the job was open for him to choose another running mate. So that is a fact. That is a fact.
So that's edited. I think she did spend a little bit of time saying Joe Biden is sharp. Joe Biden is I think she did give a couple of seconds worth of like, Joe Biden is just fine, but I'm not running. Joe Biden's not running for president. But tell me, what was your problem with that?
Well, I think where Brett actually caught her out quite adroitly, and where she didn't really seem to have much of a response, was when he said, well, Biden may not be running anymore, but Trump is, and Trump does have a lot of support behind him. This is still a gridlocked race, which is true. And I think what she really needed to do, and the shortcoming of that approach, was if she was going to get anything out of this interview, I don't think the interviewers will have done anything to damage her support or discourage people from voting for her who may already be leaning toward voting for her, right? But if it was going to do anything, she needed to try and use the opportunity of going on Fox and maybe being exposed to a different crowd who, even if they don't have their minds entirely set up, maybe could be convinced. And she needed to use that to put some kind of some kind of clear agenda forward that could sway them. And crucially that, especially, and I don't think we could really just dismiss that or just say, or I think the problem with focusing so extensively on Trump and the vicissitudes and insanity of Trump, all of that is obviously true, but we know that. That's well-trodden ground, and the race is still where it is. Continuing to attack Trump isn't going to do very much good for helping her when it comes to helping her take a clear lead in Pennsylvania or Wisconsin or in Michigan, right? The state she needs to win, but is still very much split down the middle and could go either way if you look at the current polling. I think she needed to do a better job of actually putting forward a clearer defense of her record and clearer policies and clearer ideas that could help sway and appeal to people who may be leaning toward voting for Trump in that state and not for her because of actual problems that they're facing. And I don't think she really did that.
One thing Brett Baier tried to do was to bait her into attacking the voters, and she wisely did not take that bait.
As bad as you say that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States. Why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but
it's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a cakewalk for anyone.
So are they misguided, the 50%? Are they stupid? What is it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean.
All right, so just going to pause it there for a second. She didn't take the bait. I think that was a great answer. I think she comes across very nice, charming there. Mitt Romney made this mistake talking about, surreptitiously captured on tape, talking about the 47% of voters who are the takers, not the makers or whatever. Hillary Clinton made this huge mistake talking about the deplorables. And she's about to talk about how indeed it is Donald Trump who's talking about people being, the enemy within. But before I get there, do you agree with me that she comes across as sort of charming and likable there?
I think it sounded a bit phony, but I think probably the best she could on the spot with the premise of the question. Yes, I mean, in my mind, questions like that are real. And Brett threw out. I like Brett a lot, but Brett threw out a few of these throughout the interview. Leading questions like that are really just a waste of time for everyone, and they don't do anyone any favors. Because I think on Brett's side, it just looks like a cheap attempt to try and bait her into something for ratings. And on her end, there isn't really a way of actually tying that into anything meaningful, right? She just has to try and do her best to work around it and wrap it up in a nice bow of platitudes. And I think in that regard, she definitely did the best she could, but really questions like that are just irritating to me.
I think it's so fascinating how I find her very charming at this point. And I think that I really didn't like her in 2019. And I think it was because she was trying to show how tough she was all the time and how progressive she was, right? She's doing two things. I'm the lady boss and I'm a leftist. And both of those were like a turnoff for me electorally. She's doing the opposite now, right? She's running to the center and she's simultaneously showing the soft side. I mean, even though I would never say that about the American people, but then now she's about to lower the hammer and go on the attack, which I also respect.
And belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall.
All right, I'm not going to play this guy, but you probably know they play a clip, and it's not the right clip. Brett Baier later, a day or two later, he apologizes, which I have. But for those who haven't seen it, I've done a couple of shows on this already, but Donald Trump, on multiple occasions, has talked about the enemy within being worse, more dangerous than Russia and China. And he certainly seems to me to very clearly be saying that the enemy within includes people like the Pelosi's and Adam Schiff. And the way to handle the enemy within is via the military or the National Guard. Okay. Now, some people think, well, no, he means he's talking about radicals, Black Lives Matter, protesters. Like, I guess you can extrapolate that, but to me, it's very clear. Any rational person, I think, would conclude if you listen to it. I could play the clips, but have you seen this guy, and or do you disagree with me on that assessment?
I have. I have seen the clips. I mean, knowing I agree with you, but that's because we share the same low opinion of Trump, right? I think you could take it either way, and it is Trump. So ultimately, does he mean anything he's saying, or probably not? But the point of it is, right? He's saying that for good reason. He's saying that deliberately and purposefully. It's catnip designed to fire up his base. And it doesn't do very much good for actually maintaining decorum and reasonableness in the broader political dialogue, which is, I think, the real problem with it.
Now, this was tough for Kamala Harris because she is saying Trump is calling the voters, or at least Democratic voters, Democratic politicians, the enemy within. And then Brett Baier plays a clip which doesn't show Trump saying that. And then she says, no, you got it wrong. And then I'm going to play the clip later, I guess days later, Brett Baier admits that he played the wrong clip.
Harold, I did make a mistake, and I want to say that mistake. When I called for a soundbite, I was expecting a piece of the enemy from within, from Maria Bartiromo's interview, to be tied to the piece from your town hall, Harris, where you asked the former president about the enemy from within. It just had the piece about the town hall, and just take a listen to what I meant to roll.
I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics, and I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
My point is that we asked him the question about that sentence and what he was trying to mean.
So, I mean, look, I think Trump clearly feels like Democrats have weaponized government to go after him. I would argue because he committed crimes, but he sees they did it to me, so I should do it to them. They use the Department of Justice. I can use the military to go after them. That to me seems like what he's saying. And I guess my question to you, do you think Brett Baier made a mistake? Did a producer make a mistake? Was this intentional? Because it was a big moment to get it wrong.
I would trust that it was a genuine mistake. I think Brett is someone who does have a lot of integrity, and I could see it just being an error on somewhere in the chain, right? However,
he didn't call it out in the moment. That's the other thing too. It's like I could see if an intern or a producer ran the wrong clip, but Brett in the moment didn't say, I apologize, we had the wrong clip. Anyway, he acted as if he played the correct clip.
That is true. I mean, we can only speculate, right? I think that what we can only speculate about that, but we can see clearly how Harris handled it. And I think Harris responded to it well, and that was honestly one of the highlights of the debate for her, one of the highlights of the interview for her. It actually reminded me, in moments like that, of the famous Bill Clinton interview with Chris Wallace on Fox, from where, do you know what I'm talking about, Matt?
No, I don't know this.
There was, I'm struggling to think of when it was, but there's an interview, you can find it on YouTube pretty easily, where Wallace hosted. I cannot think of when the year was. I might mangle some of the details. But Bill Clinton came on to Fox. He did an interview with Chris Wallace.
Didn't do that. Now, the 9/11 Commission was a political document, too. All I'm asking is, anybody that wants to say I didn't do enough, you read Richard Clark's
Do you
book.
think you did enough, sir?
No, because I didn't get him.
Right.
But at least I tried. That's the difference in me and some, including all the right-wingers that are attacking me now. They ridicule me for trying. They had 8 months to try. They did not try. I tried. So I tried and failed. When I failed, I left a comprehensive anti-terror strategy and the best guy in the country, Dick Clark, who got demoted. So you did Fox's bidding on this show. You did your nice little conservative hit job on me. What I want to know is...
I'm asking a question. You don't think that's a legitimate question?
No, it was a perfectly legitimate question, but I want to know how many people in the Bush administration you asked this question of. I want to know how many people in the Bush administration you asked, why didn't you do anything about the coal? I want to know how many people you asked, why did you fire Dick Clark? I want to know how many people you asked about this.
Did you ever watch Fox News Sunday, sir?
I don't believe you asked them that.
We asked plenty of questions.
You didn't ask that, did you? Tell
about
the truth,
the USS Cole?
Tell the truth, Chris.
With
Did you
Iraq
ever
and
ask that?
Afghanistan, there's plenty of stuff to ask.
Did you ever ask that? You set this meeting up because you're going to get a lot of criticism from your viewers because Rupert Murdoch's supporting my work on climate change. And you came here under false pretenses and said that you'd spend half the time talking about, you said you'd spend half the time talking about what we did out there to raise $7 billion plus in 3 days from 215 different commitments, and you don't care.
But President Clinton, if you look at the questions here, you'll see half the questions about that. I didn't think this was going to set you off on such a tear.
You launched it set off on a tear because you didn't formulate it in an honest way, and because you people ask me questions, you don't ask the other side.
And
Richard Clark,
that is not true.
Richard Clark made it clear in his testimony.
Would you like to talk about the Clinton Global Initiative?
No, I want to finish this now.
All right. Well,
all I'm saying is you falsely accused me of giving aid and comfort to bin Laden because of what happened in Somalia. No one knew Al-Qaeda existed then.
But did they know in 1996 when he declared war on the U.S.? Did they know in 1998
Absolutely.
when he bombed the two embassies? Did they know in 2000 when he hit the coal?
What did I do? I worked hard to try to...
And Wallace tried to push him on his foreign policy record and on what he described as Clinton's failure to deal with Osama bin Laden, and the implication was obviously that was what set the stage for 9/11 to happen. And Clinton argues back against him in a very fiery, forceful way. And I think at the best of times, Harris's performance was very much evocative of that. However, Bill Clinton was also a very articulate and a very skillful debater who always, even if he wasn't really saying anything, he was always very effectively able to make it seem as though he was. And to have that patina, or at least that illusion of substance, was generally present, right? I mean, that's how he did so well in the presidential debates. Harris, I don't think, has quite that same skill. And I think that was really, that deficiency was what kept rearing its head throughout the conversation.
So, I mean, Bill Clinton was an exceptional politician. Barack Obama, generational, talent. Ronald Reagan, the great communicator. So there are greats. But I have to say, I'm getting sick of hearing people say, well, anybody else except for these two. I mean, they said that about Hillary and Trump. I think they were right. They said that about Biden and Trump. I think that was a legitimate thing. Biden's a million years old. Trump is Trump. I think it's a cop-out at this point that people are saying, how could we end up with these two? Kamala Harris is like, well, look, I think Kamala Harris is actually performing pretty darn well right now. And I think it's an excuse for people who want to either not vote or vote for Trump again. To say, well, Democrats could have run. Who would it have been? Who do you like? Do you want Mitt Romney to be the Democratic nominee for? I'm not saying this to you, Guy Denton. I'm just throwing this out because I've been hearing this a lot. I was not a big Kamala Harris fan. I think she was a horrible politician in 2019 and 2020. And I expected her to be really bad this time too. And honestly, I could not imagine a scenario where she would have been a better candidate than she's been in the last 2 or 3 months. She is done within the realm of possibility. I mean, Ronald Reagan ain't walking through that door. Bill Clinton ain't walking through that door. Within the realm of possibility, I could not imagine her being better than she has been.
I've been thinking about this a lot too, and I hear what you're saying. I think
Meanwhile, and I apologize, but meanwhile, Donald Trump is playing 45 minutes of music at his rallies and dancing to the music.
I would have loved to have been at that rally, Matt. I don't know what you're talking about. That looked like a lot of fun.
There wasn't enough kiss.
There was not. I'm sure he couldn't get the rights, or maybe he could have. Gene Simmons probably would have allowed him to end the rally with Rock and Roll All Night. I'm surprised that didn't happen. No, I think I hear what you're saying. However, I would give more of a benefit of the doubt, especially to conservatives who are still reluctant to just fully embrace Harris or say say explicitly that Harris should be elected over Trump, right? Because I do think a lot of the suspicions about Harris but also the general sense that Harris in many ways is still a cipher, is still very much an unknown quantity. I think a lot of that is valid, and really you can't blame people in our camp, Matt, for just wishing that we could have an actual principled conservative candidate back, and for simply mourning what seems to have happened to the right, and not really being able to look to Harris as much of a positive alternative to that either. I don't feel quite as opposed to just despair for all things as you do, I guess.
I've got a few more years under this belt, Guy Denton. Okay, let's move. I'm going to probably have to skip some clips. I've got so many clips. But
let's do a bumper episode, Matt. 2 hours of nothing but Trump rally clip.
For patrons only, yeah. Special bonus episode for patrons only. The Al Smith dinner, big Catholic dinner in New York City each year. Kamala Harris skipped the event. It was hosted by Jim Gaffigan, who's I actually know him a little bit. I went to see him when he was here in DC, got to go backstage and hang out a little bit. One of my favorite comedians. I thought he did a really good job. Here's a couple clips from Gaffigan.
It is impossible to not have a strong opinion about President Trump. You either think he is endearingly outspoken and brash, or you think he's a sociopath, and you'd like to be his running mate.
This one didn't go over so well.
You know, during the first and only debate, President Trump talked about migrants taking cats and eating them. You know, if you're keeping track at home, this is the second time grabbing a kitty has been part of a campaign issue.
Not his best material. He did go after Kamala Harris too. She wasn't there, but you know, that's fair game.
You know, this event has been referred to as the Catholic Met Gala. 22%.
So this is like a montage, I think, of him talking about Kamala.
22% of Americans identify as Catholic. Catholics will be a key demographic in every battleground state. I'm sorry, why is Vice President Harris not here? I mean, consider this. This is a room full of Catholics and Jews in New York City. This is a layup for the Democratic nominee. I mean, in her defense, I mean, she did find time to appear on The View, Howard Stern, Colbert, and the longtime staple of campaigning, the Call Her Daddy podcast. President Biden couldn't be here tonight. The DNC made sure of that. That's... I guess I'm the only one that reads history. The media has begun discussing the phenomena of secret Trump voters. I don't know if you've heard about this. People who publicly say they would never vote for Trump, but then when they go in the voting booth, they do. It's a small group. They're called the Biden family. The Democrats have been telling us Trump's re-election is a threat to democracy. In fact, they were so concerned of this threat, they staged a coup, ousted their democratically elected incumbent, and installed Kamala Harris. In other words, all her dreams have come true. Really? It really makes you consider the power of prayer, right, Cardinal? Sometimes prayers take 3.5 years and a George Clooney op-ed.
It's pretty good. I think it's fair game. Go after both sides. I don't know if you've been watching SNL, but he's been playing Tim Walz, and Dana Carvey's been playing Joe Biden, and so there was a picture of them at dinner. So it was Jim Gaffigan, Dana Carvey, Nate Bargatze, who hosted it, was there at the dinner, and Lorne Michaels. And I'm like, I normally don't envy celebrity stuff, but I'm like, that I would love to have been at that dinner. Are you a Gaffigan fan?
I'm sure Jim Gaffigan would love to join us in the wrong place at the wrong time, Matt. If we could, I
might be able to get him, but I don't know if it's worth. Well, maybe after the election. He's a little busy right now, but I don't know if it's worth calling out that favor. For this lowly podcast. It's kind of,
lowly. What show are you watching, Matt? Have you seen the speaking of Lorne Michaels and the SNL and SNL? Have you seen the new Saturday Night Live movie?
No, I haven't. Tell us about it. What is it? Where is it?
It's I saw it the other night. It's by Ivan Reitman's son, Jason Reitman, who I haven't seen them, but people may probably know best from directing those recent Ghostbusters reboot, remake, sequel things, which I did not see. This, yeah. Moving on, but this, it's interesting. It's essentially, it's a dramatization of the hour of the 90 minutes that led up to the premiere of the first episode of Saturday Night Live. And so it centers on Lorne Michaels, but John Belushi and Chevy Chase and Aykroyd and all the other prominent people in it, played by various actors who look and sound, who the uncanny valley effect isn't that strong. The actors look and sound reasonably close to who they're portraying. And I was actually surprised by how much I enjoyed it. It's very slight. It's nothing. It's not a remarkable piece of filmmaking,
like a small
or anything.
film.
Yeah. But it's
what's it called?
It's just called Saturday Night, and it just came out. But it's fun, and for anyone, I mean, I didn't grow up with SNL, right? I mean, you couldn't get it in England, so it's never really been a big part of my comedy or TV diet. But I am, fascinated by comedy writing and comedy history and all of that, and so watching it just on those terms, it made it entertaining and interesting for me. And I'm sure someone who is
like, do you have to go to the movie theater to see it, or is it streaming?
I have no idea, actually. I would imagine it's already streaming, but I don't know.
But you saw it at a theater. You saw it at a theater. Okay.
I did, yes. Because I'm a sad man, Matt.
You're an elitist.
Yes, I did.
All right. So Trump did speak, and it was everything you might imagine that it was. It was the charm and delightfulness of Donald Trump.
I used to think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have periods, but then I met Tim Walz. Well, I'd better wrap up because Mayor Adams told me earlier that I needed to make this one very quick, especially the city has reserved this room for a large group of illegal aliens coming in from Texas. There's a group called White Dudes for Harris. Have you seen this? White Dudes for Harris. Anybody know? Are some of you here? White Dudes for Harris? Doesn't sound like it. But I'm not worried about them at all because their wives and their wives' lovers are all voting for me.
All right, let me just stop here real quick. Because the only cuck that I am aware of wasn't it Jerry Falwell Jr.? Isn't that the only actual I do feel like there's some, projection, but anyway.
A major issue in this race is childcare, and Kamala has put forward a concept of a plan. A lot of people don't like it. The only piece of advice I would have for her in the event that she wins would be not to let her husband, Doug, anywhere near the nannies. Just keep them away. That's a nasty one. Chuck Schumer is here looking very glum. Doesn't he look glum? It looks glum. But look on the bright side, Chuck, considering how woke your party has become, If Kamala loses, you still have a chance to become the first woman president.
That's a nasty one, too. Mean-spirited, bullying, everything you've come to expect. And then on top of it, he had this delightful comment as well.
Bill de Blasio was actually able to make it tonight, to be honest. He was a terrible mayor. I don't give a shit if this is comedy or not. He was a terrible mayor. He did a horrible job.
Dropping S-bombs there with Catholic priests and, cardinals and all sorts of dignitaries. But did you see it? What do you make? Am I a prude? What do you think?
No, as you said, Matt, I mean, mean-spirited, crude, piggish, blasphemous, all words you would want to associate with the leader of the free world and commander-in-chief, right? I think I did see it. I thought it was typical Trump. There isn't very much. I thought in the beginning, at the very beginning, he actually did seem somewhat disciplined and like it might actually be funny and quite a charming and an earnest and good-natured way, and then it gradually just degraded. Really, though, I would like Schumer, at least credit to Schumer. He looked like a good sport in those clips. He took it well. It didn't look like he was losing his cool or anything like that. So optically, that's a win for him. But everyone else in that video, my eyes kept going to Bloomberg in the front row because Bloomberg looks like he's in the middle of a hostage film. He looks like he's staring ahead with nothing but terror and regret in his eyes. So I'll be disappointed if someone doesn't make a montage of facial expressions from the other attendees.
This morning, Trump was on Fox and Friends, and he suggested that people at Fox wrote jokes for him. Fox has denied this. But I'm wondering, Kamala Harris could have gone, and I'm guessing she could have had some of the best joke writers in Hollywood give her jokes to use to make fun of Trump. But maybe that isn't her brand, right? Maybe that takes away, A, from the joyfulness, and B, from the seriousness. If you're going to say that Donald Trump is an existential threat, and then you joke about it, doesn't that undermine the seriousness? Like, why do you think she didn't show up, and was that a mistake, or was that the right move?
No, I think that is I hadn't actually considered that, but no, I think that is a very good point. I don't think not showing up was a mistake. I don't think I don't have much to say beyond the fact, but I don't think not attending that dinner is going to make any meaningful difference to the campaign or to her electoral prospects, especially this late in the game. And I think actually, no, what you have to say is quite compelling. If she's trying to put forward a serious message and an upbeat message, but a message that isn't frivolous and but actually is sincere and serious, and she's trying to juxtapose herself against Trump in that way and against Trump's worst and most impish, I guess you could say, impulses, then maybe there is a method to it, and it is a smart strategy.
All right. I mentioned that Donald Trump was on Fox and Friends today, this morning. We're recording this on Friday. And there were a lot of clips actually I could play, but just to keep it tight, I won't. But I'm going to play this one clip. So this little kid asks, they play a video of a little kid asking, Trump, when you were a kid, what president did you admire? And so he brings up Ronald Reagan, who there's no way he was a kid when Reagan was president. And he also invokes Abraham Lincoln. And he finds a way to, while complimenting them both, also insulting them both. So he backhandedly, it's sort of a double-edged sword. And I think he's criticizing Reagan and Lincoln for not working out deals or compromising. I guess with Reagan, it would have been with the Soviets, and with Lincoln, why didn't he compromise and settle the Civil War? Why did it have to become a war? I would have figured this out. That's my interpretation, but it's one of those things where if you just watch the clip of Trump, you may not appreciate it, but here he is praising Lincoln and then criticizing Lincoln for not working out a compromise with the Confederates.
I'm Daniel, and I'm 10, and I'm from Tennessee. What was your favorite president when you were little?
Who was your favorite president when you were little?
So I liked Ronald Reagan. I thought he was. Look, I didn't love his trade policy. I'm a very good trade. I've made some great trade deals for us, the USMCA. That wasn't his strength, but he had a great dignity about him. Ronald Reagan. You could say, there's our president, more than any others, really any of the others.
Okay, so I was wrong about the Reagan thing. He criticizes Reagan's trade policy. It's Lincoln, though. Okay,
great presidents. Well, Lincoln was probably a great president, although I've always said, why wasn't that settled? You know, I'm a guy that it doesn't make sense. We had a civil war.
Well, half the country left before he got there.
Yeah. But you'd almost say, like, why wasn't that? As an example, Ukraine would have never happened, and Russia, if I were president. Israel would have never happened. October 7th would have never happened, as you know.
So again, I mean, anyway, it speaks for itself. What do you make of that?
I just love that. Well, half the country left before he got there. Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah, Brian Kilmeade, who's actually written these history books, dropping some history on him.
Because of course, when I think about Abraham Lincoln, the man who, through his mastery of pragmatism and rhetoric, held the nation together through its most troubled period and ensured that he would not alienate his opponents in a bloody and horrifying conflict. Of course, there is a man who failed to compromise, right? That was Abraham Lincoln's greatest failing.
Well, there you have it. You've wasted another 36 minutes again.
So have we, in fairness, Matt.
Maybe longer. Yeah. Almost 40 minutes. But you know, you've spent your time pretty well. This is the only politics who makes that deal with you that we will drive you drive us wild, we will drive you crazy. But Guy Denton, I feel like it's that time of day again. I think it's cold gin time again. What do you say?
I would concur with that. I would like to shamelessly plug, and it is actually quite a smooth and elegant transition considering that we were just talking about Lincoln. I have a review of a book that focuses on Dear Mr. Lincoln coming out in the Washington Free Beacon this weekend. So you can compare my analysis of Lincoln's presidency to Trump's and see whose you agree with.
Awesome. What's the book?
The book is, I feel like we may have talked about this in 1804 or whenever I actually started reading the book, because it is a giant tome. But it's called Backroads and Better Angels by a writer at Bloomberg called Frank Barry. And basically the premise of the book is during COVID, he took a gigantic cross-country road trip. And along the way, he interviewed Americans from all different walks of life, and he tried to get to the bottom of how we can move on, heal the divides of negative polarization and partisanship, and so on. I think the book is, I don't want to spoil too much. You could read the thrilling and fascinating piece to find out, but I think the book has a lot of merit to it, and it's admirable how much effort he put into it and how impartial he tried to be. However, I do think it's far too long for its own good, and ultimately a lot of what he's trying to say sort of gets lost in the noise and the scale of it. But
well, Vic Mattis once told me that a book review either needs to be positive or has to decimate and eviscerate the author. So I hope you went all in on that.
Hey, Vic, it worked for Vic, so I'll take the money. I'll take the money and run, Matt.
Well, you've lapped me in reviews. I think didn't we have one that came out the same weekend a few months ago? Yeah.
We did. I can't remember what either of us reviewed. But
me neither. But you know, time is a flat circle. All right, everybody. Well, you know what to do. Click like, rate, review, subscribe, tell a friend, all that good stuff. And Guy Denton, I guess we'll see you back here at the wrong place and the wrong time and the wrong stuff next week.
There's no place else I'd rather be, Matt. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, man.